So we call to order the Skokie Public Library Board meeting Wednesday, May 15th, 2024 at 6:30. Are there any comments from observers, Susie? There aren't any. So we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the regular April 10th, 2024 meeting. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve? So moved. Second. And now we'll go to the director's report.
We'll just go to the consensus for that.
Okay, okay. Right? Yes.
Oh, you can do a couple. Go ahead.
Wait, isn't that?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, okay.
All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. No, you're good.
You got it, girl.
We're with you.
That was perfect.
Okay, now I think we can go to the questions.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. And thank you, Shadna, for presiding over the meeting. Good news, the third floor renovation is complete. The staff have moved up there. The furniture is all but complete. We have maybe like a handful of things that are being delivered soon, and just a very small number of punch list items on there for the construction. But essentially, we're done, and the Sheldon have turned over the space to us. So all out of the annex, we're here. We're working from the library. It feels really great. The staff have overwhelmingly, kind of expressed their happiness with the spaces. So just want to firstly thank the board for its support for the project. It's a big commitment to, and a demonstration of how much the board values the working conditions of the staff. So just acknowledge that. I also just want to take this time to acknowledge all the hard work that our staff have put into the project. Laura McGrath, our deputy director, basically handled the logistics of moving us back into the third floor, and really handled that gracefully and with diligence and a lot of hard work, and it was really smooth. I felt it was just a really smooth process. Susie did so much with that process as well, so I just want to acknowledge Susie's efforts as well. Susie handled a lot of the logistics with Laura and handled all the moving stuff. And then our building services staff, our IT staff, just everyone moving up to the third floor, they did a wonderful job. So, sorry, am I missing anyone? Maybe really should.
So the highlights.
Yeah, but really smooth project. Of course, I want to thank Sheldon Nut Construction and Andrew Berman. I see him online right now for all their hard work. I think we have a great team that is used to working together, and completed a number of renovation projects now that we're really successful in all accounts. So really pleased with that. So if the board would like, towards the end of the meeting, we can do a quick walk around, like to see the space. But also the good news is that we will definitely close out the project under budget. So that's really nice. Yeah, that's a good bonus there. Yeah.
How much have you budgeted?
The final numbers are still yet to be determined, but I think it'll be a little over 100,000 saved. Yeah. The art committee has been meeting, and as I mentioned in my report, we have really focused our efforts on identifying the pieces in our current collection that we are not displaying currently and may be okay with the accessioning. So we recently met with an art expert, local art expert, to talk about that process. So I hope to have more of an update on what she recommends in terms of next steps. And I'll share a list of items that she thinks we can actually sell or find a market for. So we're hoping also to use some of that money and put that into our art acquisition fund so that we can acquire some new art. You probably noticed as you walk around the building, there are certain spots in the library where we don't have art, but, there's a glaring need for art because, large empty walls, right? So the primary location I'm thinking of is, the top of the staircase on the second floor where it's all set up for large pieces of artwork, but, we don't have anything displayed right now, so. That's another future, topic I'll bring to the board for consideration is, possibly a transfer into the art acquisition fund that of a certain amount of money based on what we think we might need for acquiring art this year. So, but yeah, it's exciting to think about, kind of like after the renovation projects, completing that process by considering how to enhance the spaces, even more, so. I think the rest is really self-explanatory and I don't need to expand on it, but, yeah, if you have any questions, happy to comment further or answer.
I only just have one comment.
Sure.
It said to let you know if we might be attending the Festival of Culture.
Yes.
I may attend one of those days.
Okay,
Not sure yet, but just let me know.
if you happen to, know that you'll be attending Saturday morning at the opening ceremony, please let me know because, I think they'll, announce kind of honored guests from the various partner orgs.
If I win, it would be on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have a table there. so,
Yeah.
well, yeah, you'll please stop by and say hi to our staff there. Thank you.
No. So now we move on to the approval of the April 2024 disbursement report. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Okay, so we'll do roll call for this. Mary,
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
and yes for me. Now we'll move on to the analysis of the general operating fund for the 7th fiscal year.
Yes, this is on page 18 of your packet, I believe. So this is actually something Allison prepared, our finance manager prepared. It's something that's provided to the board every May. And it just gives you, as we close out the immediate past fiscal year 24, at the end of April. We're not quite closed out because there are still invoices to be paid for work done in April and products or items received in April, but this gives you an idea of where we are looking to end the year in terms of what we've spent, but also the revenue that we've received. So if you look at that last column where it says unaudited fiscal year 23-24, you'll see that we're in a good position with about $1 million in revenue over expenditures. So we use, just as a reminder to the board, as we finalize the numbers for the fiscal year 24, Allison and I will have a better idea of where our position is with the balances of our general operating fund accounts. And when we know for sure what that looks like, we may come to the board in June or July and ask for an approval of a transfer of a certain amount of money from the general operating fund to the reserve fund. So that's not on the agenda for today, but this is just kind of a heads up on what may come in June or July. Does anyone have any questions about page 18?
Just so I get a refresher.
Sure.
On the corporate replacement taxes. So it's like, I look at all these other line items and, they're fairly consistent across the board. It's, property taxes fluctuates a little bit, but fairly consistent. Obviously, lost items and circulation revenue, we understand why those are down. I mean, all of it makes sense. But I guess just maybe at a very high level, maybe give a recap of why these numbers can be so erratic within this line item of like corporate replacement taxes, just so we can especially as we go forward with planning it. Would like to have a refresher.
Yeah. To be honest, I'm not sure anyone I don't have an explanation for that, honestly, and everyone I talked to in in my position or even at the village, you know, it's just a surprise that
Yeah.
that number was so much higher than what was projected earlier in the year. So I don't know if it has to deal with, somehow it has to deal with like how Kakami is collecting, the PPRT taxes
Yeah.
from, business owners and for property and commercial properties. So I don't know if there are like less appeals or more appeals or,
Okay,
but we can try to look into that for you, but it's, from what I can understand, it's hard to explain and it's unpredictable. So that's why, you know, revenue projections for this current fiscal year, we didn't make that jump and kind of assume that we're gonna get close to like $900,000.
Yeah.
Because really, the norm has been more around the three or 400,000 mark.
yeah.
So, this might be just kind of an anomaly.
Yeah, I remember that makes sense. I remember when we did the budgeting, I remember us having that conversation
Yeah.
that we tend to be more conservative and this was kind of an anomaly
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the past couple of years. So
I
I just wanted to like bring it up again to the,
Yeah, I
you
wish
know.
I had a better answer. I mean, I haven't, if there is one, I haven't really heard a good explanation of it. Allison, I don't know if you've heard anything, on your end of the kind of why we've had a 3-year anomaly.
Just really no guarantee, like you said, it's based on Cook County and what they distribute. So
Yeah, I mean, even our regular property taxes, that's, as you can see, it's not exactly the same every year, even though
Right.
our tax levy is the same every year for all this period, or has been the same this entire period. You know, like people appeal, they get refunds, you know, like, so all of this is kind of like in flux year to year. But the most important thing for us has been the steadiness of the property tax revenue. It's just like clockwork. Which is a good thing for us.
thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'll keep my ears open too. I kind of have some sense of what, that this is gonna be, the new norm. We'll definitely
Yeah.
share that with the board and make sure that that factors into not only our budget projections, but also our tax levy considerations.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I like even just how this table is laid out so you can really see the trends year over year. Because I think if you were just to spotlight, you know, like a 3-year, you know, trend analysis, you wouldn't necessarily see the same type of thing as you have when you go far back. So I think that this wide range of these.
Yeah. Agreed. This doesn't need any kind of approval, and it's just for information purposes.
Okay, then we'll move on to the approval of the chiller replacement pay app number 7. Can we get a motion to approve the chiller replacement pay app number 7 at the total cost of $42,855.64? Okay, so because it's money, let's go around. Mary,
Yes.
Amanda? Yes. Sarah?
yes,
Yes.
And I'm yes.
Thank you.
And we move on to the approval of the construction pay app number 8. Okay, we get a motion to approve the construction pay app number 8 at the total cost of $300,376.51.
So moved.
Second.
And again, it's money, so we'll go around. Mary?
Yes.
Amanda?
yes,
Vera?
yes,
Ella?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. And now we move on to the approval of the consent agenda.
I was just blown away by some of the numbers in here. I was like, oh my gosh, they processed 37,000 new books. That number just was amazing. I can't even imagine what it processed 37,000.
A lot of stuff and a lot of hard work. Yeah.
yeah,
I just feel like I just wanted to recognize that because I feel like a lot of that work goes on behind the scenes where people are not necessarily seeing everything that goes into picking new items, processing them, finding, you know, putting them on shelf. It's just a lot of work. So I just thought that was
I
fantastic.
think we're finding that out, but we always try to make it a point to, just acknowledge that if those folks and our staff who are working with collections don't do their jobs and the items there on the shelf or online where it's supposed to be, people can't access that, so, you know, so, I mean, there's a reason why our department is called Access Services, and they do a great job.
Like, I can't forget the 6,000 DVDs and Blu-rays too, on top of that, so it's a lot, you know?
It's a lot. Thank you for pointing it out. So we will also just take a second to point out that the longevity of recognition for staff.
Yeah.
So Laura, can you just remind the board of where we are in that process?
So this is month 1 of 4, where you will be reading profiles of people who have been here between 20 and 30 years. We had 20 staff in that category, so I had to break them up because some of us don't have time to do all the interviews in 1 month. So I did make time to interview myself this month, but, I didn't write a memo for this one because I thought, well, it's just gonna be the same for the next couple go around, so hope you keep enjoying these write-ups.
Did you sit in a room and just interview? talk
I
to
just talked to
yourself?
myself for an hour, yeah, great.
Did you record yourself so you can refer to your notes later?
That was gonna say-
Yeah, yeah.
I love your pick of the first day.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was good.
I told you I started here when I was 5.
Yeah.
So on page 29,
Yes.
we talk about how the year-to-date gate count is 73% of what it was in fiscal year 2019. Do you have any more to expand upon that? Obviously, it's still, you know, less than what it was prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
So any thoughts about that?
I guess I can just say that in all my conversations with other library directors about these two numbers, circulation and the gate count. The gate count is very typical of what I've been hearing from other libraries. I don't think I've heard of another library that has captured the gate count of prior to the pandemic, so it is kind of something that's being seen and experienced across the country, I think. But the good news is that the number is going up year to year over the past several years. And it just might also be a difference in how people use the library. It might be fewer visits, but more items while they're per visit, you know. To allow people to a little bit more flexibility of not having to come in to return the book on time or get that fine, right? So like maybe that has shaped some of the behavior as well, or in a good way. So, but from our just pure observance of how the library is being used, I mean, it definitely feels like people are here, that the spaces are being used. It's a full, like, used library. So I don't think this is any kind of indication of, you know, not seeing the community in our library or inactivity in the library. So
What are the stats now on meeting rooms?
the meeting room reservations or the study rooms or
Yeah.
study rooms are booked.
Actually, they're categories.
Yeah, study rooms are constantly booked. The meeting rooms are used to, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we can get those to you at the next meeting.
It's a little skewed because the Cosmos and the MR haven't been available for the last 8 months, so we just got the Cosmos back online this week, the MR will be coming. So those numbers are gonna look a little wonky year over year for a while, but there's been great demand for this room, and so the other two have been
Is this
offline.
better?
Yeah.
Community groups are asking to utilize the space.
Oh, yes, yes.
And yeah, like Laura said, they'll definitely start using the Cosmos and MR rooms as well. But the study rooms are constantly using. I think it's hard to get a study room, even though we doubled the number of people. So. Yeah. And the other counterpart to that is the circulation figure that you see, and that is actually something that I think is maybe perhaps higher than what other libraries have experienced. From what I've heard of this thing. The youth circulation has been increasing year to year since we renovated our kids area. So I think the way we've as we talked about before, the way we now display materials throughout the library or face out. Picture books are completely face out now. It's just like that's driven, I think, a lot more use of the collections, so. The 87%, if you take if we didn't have a drop in physical AV. Like that, we would be, I think, surpassing the pre-pandemic numbers, so. That's certainly not an indication that people aren't checking out materials like pre-pandemic. I believe they are actually more so. Sure.
Other question? So can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda? So moved. Okay, so the consensus vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And we move on to the experiential learning spaces report.
I'd like to introduce and welcome our learning experiences manager, Amy Holcomb. Amy's going to share a little bit about our spaces and talk about what's happening. Welcome.
So in my previous role, I was overseeing directly the 3 experiential learning spaces. I actually haven't been to a board meeting since 2015, but I reported on the progress of the Boombox, which is our first experiential learning space. And we've come a long way. So usage is great. Our customer service is something that we constantly hear from the community about how stellar it is. I think for a while I was getting an email like every Monday. There would be at least 2 emails regarding Sunday staff because Sundays are very busy. So the fact that people take the time to talk about the service that they're receiving is amazing. We now have a new experiential learning specialist or supervisor, Marnie Blunt, who formerly worked in teen services as a specialist back in several years ago. But having her on board too, we're shifting things up a little bit with our displays in the studio. We brought back the Design Swap and Showcase events, which are intended to inspire people to use the equipment and resources in the studio to make their own designs. And she's really leaning into the swap component of it. So encouraging community members to give one and take one for designs. And that is increasing now that there's awareness of it. We're seeing it happen a little bit more, and it'll go like full steam, I think, in the fall when we adjust our language for the description. For the Boombox, we're continuing to do our rotations that are thematically linked to cool things in the STEM world. Because of the eclipse in April, we brought space back. So Mira, you remember probably the first time we did space, because you brought us NASA goodies.
Yes.
And
Great memory.
yes. And this time we were seeing a lot more like gross motor interactivity with cardboard. Cardboard is miraculous. So we had this, our like Boombox International Space Station that was community driven. They were using just cardboard and other recyclables that we had in the space, and everyone kept adding to it. And we did include a photo of it, of the early iteration of it. It became much fancier, but in the report, that's the early days. And that actually is taken by Pam, one of our specialists, who said that this was the family's first time to the library, and they came to the Boombox and were just like blown away. And their kid was having such a good time. So we love to see that. And then with the lab, if you looked at the annual stats, both the lab and the studio saw an increase in usage in the past year. And partly with the lab, it's because we've increased to a full capacity of 15 computers. So we have 15 desktops. They are constantly in use. So on weekends, you can't get a study room, can't get a computer. The kids' computer. So.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot more community development in that space too, around gaming. So we already knew that that was like the space for it. But these things with like teens and tweens come in waves. So our first year back in the building, it was pretty chill. Then, you know, you get your second wave, and now we're on like the third wave. And there's a lot of like
cross pollination, I guess, of like the Minecraft kids with the Roblox kids and the older tweens. And then for a hot second, we were seeing high schoolers who were just like, I need a break and I'm gonna play Minecraft. It's like, cool, but you're next to an 8-year-old, so but. So it's kind of interesting to see the changes in usage in that space. For a while, it was pretty static, and now we're like, whoa, what is this? And we're not quite sure what's next with the lab, because we can only do so much in the physical space. But we know that gaming is of interest, so we were able to help promote the tween Mario Kart tournament Youth Services was hosting. So some kids, you know, go to where they want to go and they forget that there are other things in the library. So it was a good way to be like, yeah, there's other opportunities to game too. You should go to this event. So we're hoping that we can continue that collaboration, even if it's just with the cross promotion.
One thing that I love about the spaces, all the spaces, that they're always staffed by our library colleagues when they're open, and there's a reason for that. A big reason is that we have a relational approach to many of these services, just like we do for like teen services and youth service spaces as well. So I don't know, maybe if you want to talk a little bit about that, kind of the interactions that people have with the staff and
Yeah.
getting to know patrons.
So a big thing that we look for in like shift reports and just other observations is how patrons going into the spaces are making connections. And we have like 2 indicators of that. So if they're making connections with staff, like talking to us, and then also with their peers, so with other patrons. Staff are big welcome. If you've ever been into any of the spaces, you should automatically be welcomed by a staff member, because a lot of times people walk in and they're like, what is this? We still see that in the studio where they're like, oh my gosh, I've never been here before. And so staff will get up and give you a tour. Because if you don't know, then you're not going to be able to make the most of your visit, right? So we want to make sure that you're aware of what your resources are, you're aware of what the learning tools are as well, particularly in the studio where it can be intimidating. But it's really important that we know patrons' names to welcome them back, because we often see our regulars and we want them to know our name too. So they can ask for help when they need it, whether it's with a specific piece of equipment or like a tip in the lab. You want to know names. You be like, okay, so please, I know that your cow got whatever in Minecraft, but like, we're all on the server together. So that we're doing things like that too. And the staff really love what they do, and that makes a huge difference. I actually am like, I miss the spaces sometimes. It's like, oh, I don't spend as much time in there anymore, which is okay. But even in like, sorry, you have this picture up. When we take pictures, we remember the stories, and we had a patron come back who had previously been in the studio the first time, came in. I had like a not great interaction with them. And I was like, I'm sorry, but they came back, we got through it, and they were doing embroidery for their, they were having like this party to celebrate themselves before they underwent a pretty major surgery. Came back months later, and I remembered them because I didn't give the best service the first time, right? So you're like, oh, I remember that. And they're like, whoa, you remember? It's like, yeah, what are you working on now? How do you do it? So it makes me feel good, but it also makes the patrons feel good. And we see that pretty consistently in all of the spaces. It looks different, obviously, with like a 10-year-old kid in the lab, where they're not going to be like, oh, hey. But you know, you get like the nod and you're like, yeah.
But there's a sense of like being welcome
Yeah.
and really warmly received, and like that hospitality in those spaces is something that I've noticed as a user of those spaces as well. So yeah, can you just also talk a little bit about the impact and outcomes project that you're working on with Edison?
So one of the grant projects that we're part of is this online toolkit with mainly Madison Public Library, but also Watauga Public Library, where it's an observation tool. So we've already been doing shift reports for the learning spaces since, I don't know when I implemented them. But shift reports are a way for staff to report what happened on a day-to-day basis, because as the supervisor, you can't be in 3 spaces all at once, right? And you want to have a bigger picture of what's happening. We also have clear goals for each of the learning spaces, and we want to be able to capture, like, are we meeting those goals? Like, are we seeing people return? Are we seeing new people too? 'Cause it's both, you want both. And the observation deck is now this toolkit that is publicly, it will be publicly available. They're piloting with more libraries. But we are in earnest going to start using it in the next couple of months to capture a little bit more of like the fuzzy stuff, right? Because we already know the numbers. We already know time spent, because we get that through different, like through our sign-in. But we really want to capture those interactions between staff and patrons, and also as well as patrons and patrons in a better way, so we can give you more photos that look amazing, but also be able to measure a little bit more of the big buckets are called dimensions, and then the little buckets are like the indicators. So we align our dimensions with the goals of the spaces as well as the strategic plan. And then the indicators are like what you actually see. So Amanda, I greet you by name, like you remember my name, great, like we made a connection, that's awesome, we're gonna write that down. But then like this one photo on the report of the gentleman holding an embroidered sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Like that was like, again, it was like, I don't know if that's gonna work. There was a whole story to it, and we were able to capture it through this toolkit. It's accessible, it's just a website, but based tool, so it's accessible on laptops, which staff are using in the spaces. We'll also be using our iPads that we've had for a while, that kids don't seem to want to play with anymore, which is fine, because we got cardboard. So we'll use the iPads too, so we can actually take photos, and everyone is contributing to. So I'm excited to see that shift. I talked about it with Marnie, the experiential learning supervisor, and she'll be moving that forward this summer. We have our summit with the team on Friday, where we'll revisit the toolkit, because they've already done it, but they did it on paper because at the time the website was okay. But it's already things that they're doing. We're just gonna put it in one spot and have it be a little bit more easy to pull like the relevant data that we're looking for, and then also be able to notice like, oh, this last month, we didn't see any of these making connections, like what's happening.
This is, I just want to point out, I mean, in the library, well, this is like really innovative work that could be used across libraries all across the world, honestly, you know, for this type of service model and space. It's really groundbreaking. So, and you know, Amy's a part of the team that's really developing this tool. So it's great.
And we're the only library that's using it for spaces. Other libraries are using it for programming. So it's different, right? Spaces are every day.
Yeah.
Programs are every day too, but in a different context. So we've been able to tweak the framework in developing it to make sure it actually works for us. Because initially I was like, this isn't gonna work for us on a day-to-day basis, and now we figured out a way that like, oh, actually, yes, now it can. And then take that and also apply it to general programming and see what we can glean from that as well.
Amy's been here for many years now, and as we renovated our spaces, Amy and our team really kind of took the spaces and really developed them into what they are today. So we got empty rooms, and the creativity is like infused in there. All the staff innovation, and it's amazing what they've created. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll move on to the.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the approval of the Bibliacorp renewal. If anyone doesn't have any questions or anything, get a motion to approve the 3-year renewal of Bibliacorp for $50,072.35.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so money will go around. Mary,
Yes.
Amanda? Yes. Ira?
Yes.
Tessa?
Yes.
And I guess.
Thank you.
And then we'll move on to the acceptance of awards of bids for Petty Auditorium project.
This is the big one on the agenda, obviously, and I know I've shared the memo, all the details are in there. I'll just point out that, Josh Campanelli, our project manager from Shills, that is on the screen, as well as Andrew Berman, our architect. So, but we worked with both, ABA and SMC to throughout this bid process. We had a bid day, bid opening day, in late April, and the bids came back, and they weren't really, much of a surprise, given the scope of the project. I did point out here that the original, estimated cost of the project back a few months ago was, close to $1 million, and now it's closer to 1.3 million. I want to assure you that Allison and I have been really going over the numbers of our current reserve fund balance, factoring in the remaining costs of the chiller project and third floor project, factoring in what the cash flow analysis looks like for our operating fund as well. And we feel confident that we can absorb the additional costs of the project at 1.3 million and really have a good position with our reserve fund and our general operating fund after all these projects are done. So I can go into more detail on that if you'd like, but Josh is also on the call. Josh, I don't know if you want to comment on the bid process and what you saw and.
Sure. We actually pushed the bid a little bit. I'm sorry, didn't push the bid, pushed the start of the project, which I think helped our bids come in. The summertime's a really tough time to bid and get a lot of bidders because people contractors will load up on their work oftentimes in February, March, and even before that. So I think it worked out. We changed the schedule a little bit. I think we got quite a bit of our bid participation. I think we had, I don't know, I think it was at least 8 electricians on this project, which is the bulk of the work. So we had a good bid day, I think, and generated a lot of interest.
Thank you, Josh.
Just a point of
Sure,
clarification.
sure.
So today, we're being asked to approve 930,730, but we just confirmed that ultimately the total cost of the project will be closer to 1.3 million.
Right.
So is your plan to come back to us with that remaining amount?
Well, the fees, the consultant fees and Andrew's fees, SMC fees were already greenlit or approved by the board before we started the bid process months ago. I believe it was in maybe January, I believe. So
Okay.
those were already approved.
So this 930,000, this represents,
That's what hasn't been approved yet by the
okay,
board.
including the HVAC additional.
Yeah, all of the construction work and AV contractor work is what we were waiting on for the bid numbers to come back. And so that's the only portion that we have approval for right now. And that's the only portion that the bids actually cover, like the fees for SMC and AV were not part of the bid process.
Right.
Yeah. Andrew's on the call as well. Andrew, I don't know if you want to make any comments or if any board members have any questions for Andrew, he's available.
I just had a question. Maybe we could go in a little bit more detail, like, how we went from 1 million to 1.3 million, like really what's driving that extra, like $300,000 in costs.
Yeah.
Why it's necessary to possibly consider spending that money.
I can speak to two things that, and then maybe I can pass it to Andrew, for the last thing, but the one simple thing is just the presence of addition of an HVAC unit in the cooling, in the control room. So that's something that was determined after the further design work was completed. And then there's when you go into the patio from the main entrance that most people go through, there's like a little nook to the left where there used to be like a coat rack basically. We want to cover that up and create a little bit of a storage closet for chairs, for potential wheelchairs or walkers if people want to have that sort of way. There's really no storage space around the entrance of the patio, so it feels like a good use of that space. So that was additional scope that we had asked Andrew and Josh to look into after the initial conversations about the Petty project. But Andrew and Josh, can you speak to the lighting scope change? Because I know that was a big part of what changed as well, right?
Yeah, I think originally there was going to be a 1-for-1 swap out of the lighting that was there, and I think as the design and Andrew can jump in, but I think as the design progressed, they realized that wasn't going to be sufficient in that how you were trying to make the lighting better in there, because I know it's pretty dark. So I think that's when they realized and did some different testing and realized they had to do a different layout, which changed where some of the lighting would go, added some additional conduits to put them in the new places that they need to go, which drove the cost up a little bit. And I just want to point out too, a couple of the AV alternates also, drove the cost up as well. So, Andrew, I don't know if you wanted to jump in. You're on mute there, Andrew.
Okay, great. There we go. Yes, as Josh said, there were we went into the bidding with a number of alternates. And these included some additional lighting options, a replacement of the theatrical curtains, and a number of AV alternates, which would include a large programmable live screen behind the stage, and then 2 live screens flanking the stage, so that everybody in the audience would be able to follow both what's going on stage and a screen to their right or to their left. And so this was all to provide a richer range of programming options, both for performances, dance, and spoken presentations, informational presentations. So those were options that were above the baseline construction cost, and those are responsible, if they're accepted, for bringing the cost up to the 1.3. The lighting scope is actually going to be a really significant part of the transformation of the Petty. There's a number of different types of lighting that are being replaced. Essentially, all the lighting is being replaced. But the lighting that's in the Petty currently is either from the first build out of the Petty, so it's very antiquated lighting, both in its technology and also the way it renders the space. And then some of the other lighting that's in the Petty is retrofit lighting. For example, there's lighting on the staircases, the steps. But those were added over the years and are kind of in a provisional way. So what we're replacing are all the lights from above. These are going to light the audience. If any of you recall the lighting condition of what's currently there, the lighting is very murky in the space. It doesn't render the space well. Can't see the people in the space well. So that's going to be replaced. Big improvement. Lighting to flank the walls of the Petty is going to be replaced so that the room can have a kind of good glow to it. The lighting of the steps is going to be replaced so that there will be proper dimmable lighting. So that when one enters, you'll be able to really see your way into and down the steps to your seat. And then there's lighting for the actual stage and just presentation. All of this is programmable, so it's going to have a whole new programmability and interface that the staff will be able to use from either a fixed position within the PADI or through a laptop interface, not a laptop, but an iPad type interface. So new technology, it's going to transform the space and allow for a lot of versatility and programmability.
Some of that is, the two side screens that Andrew mentioned will also allow for greater accessibility. So we'll have the hearing loop installed, but we'll also be able to have subtitles or on films or like closed captioning on when people are speaking. So there's a lot of things that we can do by adding different screens. We just
Right.
weren't sure how that would all come back in the bid, so that's why we chose to bring some of those things out into alternates, knowing that in the future, if we wanted to, if we couldn't really afford it, these pieces, we could kind of compartmentalize them and maybe tackle them later. But as I mentioned, I'm confident that we could absorb the costs and really be in a healthy position, meeting the board's own requirements of where our reserve fund balances should be and where our GLF balance should be. And all of you know, all of you have been in programs already, so you know how valuable a space it is for us to achieve our goals, strategic goals. It's just a unique space for a library to have where it can sit that many people and have such a variety of programs.
Richard, can I make one more other question, comment? I'm sorry. Which is, I want to point out that Schuler Shook, which is a Chicago lighting and theatrical design consulting firm, worked with us through this process. And so the lighting, the controls, and the audiovisual equipment and the interface is all the product of very, very refined design and implementation thinking. So I don't want to, I want to just make it clear. It's just the architect, our reach is able to kind of oversee the whole end result, but it's important to acknowledge that there were specialists involved, and that's going to lead to a much higher level of end result for the library. And they've been very good. I would like to add as well. It's been a lot of discussion with the library and various people within the library about how the PADI is going to be used, and I'm confident that the technology and the lighting will suit those needs.
So to recap, the extra $300-some thousand, that increase in the budget that we were first presented is due to additional costs due to lighting, HVAC, and what are the other factors?
The closet storage, closet that's being built out, the front of PADI, and it also all the costs factor in alternates that are in that last attachment. So we're able to basically get everything for that cost as well.
That's a question. So can we get a motion to approve the award of the recommended bids and alternates for the 2024 Petty Auditorium renovation project in the amount of $930,730 as presented.
So moved.
Okay.
Okay, so money, so we'll go around. Mary,
Yes.
Amanda,
Yes.
Mira,
Yes.
Ella,
Yes.
and I guess.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And now to the third floor tour.
Yeah, are people interested in, we have time?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, and
Interested, yeah.
and then we can adjourn from the third floor, so you can leave your
leave my
stuff
stuff
here, or you can bring it.
We close the meeting or we're gonna?
We can adjourn, the third floor is part of the meeting technically, so we'll adjourn to the third floor.